For me personally, I still have Mets blood that runs through my veins. For me personally. How could you not expect there to be still some Mets blood that doesn't run through my veins? I mean, this team was a team that I grew up with, and the daily fortunes of this team, when I was growing up into adulthood even, into my 20s, 30s, part of my 40s, this team had the ability, based upon their results in any one given day, to significantly affect and or alter my mood from 1 second to the next. You need to know this. I mean, there was at one time no more rabid of a New York Metropolitans fan than the guy sitting here talking into this microphone right now. I mean, the Mets meant everything to me, everything to me. And so the status of the franchise has always been of interest to me. And as I have previewed the franchise and admittedly distanced myself over the last several years, in part because I've always believed it to be very important that if you're going to do a talk radio program in an area, that you be provincial in your interests. And so over the years since I've been out here in the Mountain West, I have slowly but surely gravitated and shifted to the Denver teams, the Broncos, the Rockies, the Nuggets, and I've always adopted, when I came out here, I needed to adopt a football team, and I fell in love with the University of Wyoming. So there have been my rooting interests and my passions for the better part of a good 10-year stretch. But, as I think about the Mets and I think about how much the team has meant to me, I mean, really now, I'm not talking, flippantly about this. I'm talking that the Mets were as much a part of my life as anything else. I mean, there was no bigger Mets fan on planet Earth than me. I lived and breathed and died this team 365 days a year. Season, off season, didn't matter. Didn't matter. When I was in the 6th grade, my teacher sent home my report card to my parents. And I got in trouble for this. I got grounded for this. The teacher said that Dino could be a great student if he wanted to, if his mind was not at Shea Stadium 24 hours a day. Okay, so I was a huge Mets. I tried out on Shea Stadium ground. I remember I went to Citi Field a couple of years ago, and the parking lot now covers the area where the glorious Shea Stadium used to stand. And they've got if you go there, they've got home plate, where home plate was, the pitcher's mound, first base, second base, third base. And I stood at home plate, and I walked out to the area between third base and second base, where I took ground balls with then Mets shortstop on the disabled list, as the Mets were in Los Angeles on a Western swing at the time. Took ground balls with then Mets shortstop Tom Verizor, who also spent time in his career with the Indians and the Tigers. But, I tried out on Shea Stadium ground, took swings in the batting cage, ran in the outfield, took ground balls at shortstop, all that stuff. And I mean, I snuck into Shea Stadium when I was over 18. I would drive down to Shea Stadium in the middle of the winter. Why? There was nothing going on, but I had to get inside. And I can't tell you the amount of times I snuck into the ballpark in the dead of winter and just sat in a seat and watched the planes fly overhead. How I did this without getting caught, I have no idea. I went to pick up Mama Costa I'll never forget this. In 1987, she was landing at LaGuardia Airport. Don't ask me where she was coming back from. I don't remember. What I do remember is the following. I knew I had to get down to LaGuardia Airport at night to pick her up at about 9-something in the evening. Well, I left early. And I think this was in the month of January at some point. And I left early. And I went down and stopped at Shea Stadium. Now, if you know anything about where Shea Stadium is, it is a stone's throw from LaGuardia Airport. So I went down to pick up Mama Costa. I left early, got down to Shea Stadium, left my car, climbed up, shimmied up one of the wires that's on the outside of the stadium, got into the ballpark, went out to the field. Do you know what day this was that I was doing this, or what night this was I was doing this? 1 year exactly to the moment that Jesse Orosco blew a fastball past Marty Barrett for the final out of the 1986 World Series, threw his glove into the air, and the dog pile on the mound in one of the great celebrations. And I went out to the mound and recreated exactly what Jesse Orosco did. Not only that, if you remember, Ray Knight hit a home run off of Calvin Schiraldi, and Knight circled the bases that night like a wild banshee. I stood at home plate. Now, the only lights in the ballpark that were on were the auxiliary security lights, okay? So it was pretty dark, but not dark enough to where you couldn't see. I stood at home plate, took a swing like Knight did. Imagined I was Ray Knight facing Calvin Schiraldi, and I circled the bases, just like Knight did 1 year to the moment, 1 year ago to the exact moment that happened. It was amazing. And so it's pained me to watch what has happened to the Mets over really this all started with the departure of Nelson Doubleday and the Wilpons' complete 100% control of the team. And the team has been going in reverse for the most part since the Wilpons have owned the team lock, stock, and barrel. Horrible decision-making has been made. The move from Shea Stadium to Citi Field was not something I objected to based upon the fact that the Mets were leaving Shea Stadium. Now, Shea Stadium, to me, was a tremendous stadium. It was loud. It was obnoxious. It was rowdy. It really was a home field advantage for the Mets. It was a place visiting players didn't like to come into. Shea Stadium was, listen, if Yankee Stadium is a cathedral, Shea Stadium I always thought was an amusement park. It was colorful. It had an enormous scoreboard out in right center field. It was unique. It had its own unique charm. I always loved Shea Stadium. And what I loved about Shea Stadium more than anything was that unlike today when people go to a ballpark, if you went to Shea Stadium, the only thing that you did at Shea Stadium was watch the game. That's all you did. You watched the game. So I didn't object to them moving out of Shea Stadium. What I objected to was the design, aesthetically, the features of the new ballpark. This is where the Wilpons they're obtuse in a way where they just don't have their finger on the pulse of what a Mets fan is. Fred Wilpon, when he announced that the Mets were building this new ballpark right next to Shea Stadium, basically, he essentially, by designing the exterior of and Citi Field is a gorgeous ballpark. I mean, to me, it blows the new Yankee Stadium away. It blows it away. I mean, it's much more intimate. It's got more charm, more character. It's a beautiful ballpark. But where Wilpon really pissed me off and a lot of other Mets fans off is where you design the exterior, the shell of the ballpark, to look like the late, great Ebbets Field. A franchise that, other than sharing National League lineage or National League DNA with the Mets, has nothing ever to do with the Mets. Nothing. It would be like the Yankees building a new ballpark and modeling the exterior like that of Fenway Park. Or, wait, no, that was a bad example. It would be like the Yankees rebuilding the new Yankee Stadium and having the aesthetic features on the outside resemble the Polo Grounds. Now wait. Here's where the Mets missed the deal. What they should have done was exactly what I just told you. If Wilpon wanted to hearken back to a time in National League history reminiscent of his youth, and when New York National League Baseball dominated with 2 National League franchises in town of the 3, then the outside of the ballpark should have been built to mirror, if not identically match, that of the Polo Grounds and not that of Ebbets Field. But what Fred Wilpon did was he is making, to this very day, as you walk up to Ebbets Field, to Citi Field, which looks like Ebbets Field, what he is doing is he is forcing Mets fans to relive his childhood. He is, in other words, Fred Wilpon, to me, has always been someone not so enraptured with the Mets, even though he holds in his hands the signature franchise in the New York National League. He's owned it for a long time. He's not been so enraptured with the Mets as much as his mind is still back in the glory days of the Brooklyn Dodgers. That ballpark should have been built by Mets fans for Mets fans. Now, on the inside, it looks nothing like Ebbets Field. The inside is beautiful. I mean, it's gorgeous. It's the crowd, the stands are close to the field. It's really quite a ballpark on the inside. On the outside, though, I think they missed the boat, and they sucked some of the flavor out of Mets fans by not only incorporating the design elements that mimic exactly Ebbets Field, but the first year that the Mets were in that ballpark, the new one, I mean, you didn't know where you were. You were in generic ballpark USA. What in that ballpark said Mets? Nothing. No Mets colors. No Mets, no homage to Mets. You walked in, not only did you walk into Ebbets Field on the outside, when you walked in the main rotunda, what were you hit with smack dab that you couldn't get away from it? The Jackie Robinson Rotunda. Not the Mets Rotunda celebrating Mets history all around you. No. Now, since they've added the Mets Hall of Fame, which is adjacent to the Rotunda, and I guess they did a nice job. I'll give them credit for that. But my goodness, man, you don't own the Brooklyn Dodgers. You own the New York Mets. Mets fans go there not to celebrate Jackie Robinson. They go there to celebrate and to triumph with their team. And the Mets aren't a new team anymore. The Mets are in their 53rd year of operation. It pains me. It pains me. The move to the black color scheme back in 1997. Okay? Now, when they brought it on, you remember they first came out with those black-brimmed hats. I thought it was a nice touch. I thought that the black drop shadow on the road uniforms looked okay. But instead of just making that a little part of their presentation, of their uniform package, they completely, as the years went by, destroyed one of the greatest looking uniforms in baseball, the Mets classic pinstriped home uniform with orange and blue trim, with the blue hat, the orange NY insignia, is one of the great classic looks in baseball history. And slowly but surely, they muddied that uniform up. They eventually put it in mothballs and only brought it out a few times a year. Instead, it was the black jersey at home, the black jersey on the road, the black cap, black uniforms, black jackets. I mean, and the Mets, of course, said, well, I mean, this is part of our National League lineage because the New York Giants, when they played, they had black and orange, so we just took, we initially took blue from the Dodgers, orange from the Giants, and that's how we came up with our color scheme. And then we just added to it. We just took the black also from the Giants as well. It looked horrible. Aesthetically, it was disgusting. It was awful. The Mets colors are blue and orange. That's the Mets colors. And those colors look good together. And the Mets, to me, have always been, before they started going crazy with uniform designs and incorporating all different, black color and several different looks and so on and so forth, the Mets had one of the most dignified looks in Major League Baseball. So they went to that, and they did it for the buck. Let's sell more merchandise. The hell with tradition. The hell with legacy. The hell with our fans who have grown up with the identifying markings of the Mets, easily discernible to the eye. Hey, that's a Mets brand right there. You came to ask yourself, what did the Mets brand, what did it amount to? What did it mean? You didn't know from one day to the next. Were the Yankees on the Yes Network? Now listen, I can't stand the Yankees, okay? On the Yes Network, what are they doing there? They're televising Yankees baseball. Yes, but what else are they doing? They've got things like Yankeeography, and they've got, great moments in Yankees history, and so on and so forth. What the Yankees do with the Yes Network is essentially they're selling a brand 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's a lifestyle brand. It's a brand that they are going to continue to push and push. Now, do I watch the Yes Network? No. Who watches? You see, the Yankees are right here. Who watches the Yes Network? Yankees fans watch the Yes Network. And so they cater to what Yankees fans want, what Yankees fans demand. The Yankees understand the culture of their fan base in a way that this Wilpon ownership group, which is inept, has never seemingly grasped. Now, the Yankees start the Yes Network. It's bought, of course, by Fox. They own over 80% of Yes Network now. And what they do with the Yes Network is they pound the Yankees out continuously, right? Seemingly 24 hours a day. It's Yankee this, it's Yankee that. It's pinstripe here, it's this. It's always the Yankees. Yankeeography, Yankee this, Yankee moment here, Yankee game there. Right? It's Yankees. It's a lifestyle brand. It is a network that has been built around inarguably one of the greatest iconic brands in sports that the world has known. What have the Mets done with their television network, SNY? Is that a television network designed for Mets fans exclusively? Hardly. Is that a television network, SNY, that has been designed to promote the Mets brand, to push the Mets constantly? No. They do it on a part-time basis. But what they do is they have ancillary programming with some of the most hideous programming that you're ever going to see, in studio shows that are terrible. They also cover the entire New York sports scene, highlight shows. They're partnered with the Jets the same way that the Yes Network is partnered with the Brooklyn Nets. They've got shows like Jets Nation and so on and so forth. And it's more of a well-rounded New York sports channel that, oh yeah, televises the Mets too. Again, not taking advantage of a rabid Mets fan base where they can promote that brand exclusively. Now, they have things like Mets Classics, like all these television channels do, but what I mean to say is that SNY is far significantly less a network by Mets fans, for Mets fans, pushing the Mets brand like the Yankees do continuously on the Yes Network. So they err there. A couple of years ago, they brought in Sandy Alderson to be their general manager. I thought it was a prudent move. It was also a move that was dictated to ownership by Major League Baseball, and most specifically by this bud is not for you, Selig, who said, as the Mets were about $225 million in arrears to the collective Major League Baseball community that had given them the money, the loans, the various loans, in light of the Madoff scandal that nearly crippled it did cripple the franchise financially. Major League Baseball gave them these loans and said to the Wilpons, this is exactly what, I know this for fact, this is what Selig said to Fred Wilpon. If Minaya is not going to be the general manager, you need, and especially with us giving you all this money, you need somebody we can trust and have a good relationship with as your next general manager. So that general manager is going to be Sandy Alderson. So I thought that was a good move when they brought Alderson on board. He's competent. He's building through the draft. He doesn't have a lot to work with in terms of finances, capital, because the Mets are still coming back from the Madoff thing. They are far from out of the woods, as Fred Wilpon likes to tell everyone. The Mets are still a mess, financially in disarray. But they do have some young talent coming up through the pipeline. DeGrom, I think, has got a chance to be a good pitcher. Harvey's going to come back next year and should be firing BBs again. Zach Wheeler, another guy that I happen to like a great deal. They've got some good pitchers. Position players are a little further away. The kid that's out of this city right here, who's having a great year in the Florida State League right now, Brandon Nimmo, probably going to be their center fielder of the future. But they need some bats. They are going to need to go out on the market and import some bats. But where are they going to get the money to do this? You know, Wilpon a few years ago tried to bring that investor in who was going to become part of the ownership group, but then he balked at the end. Wilpon did. Why? Because there was a clear eventual path to ownership, majority ownership, that this, I think it was Cohen was his name, the investor in New York that he wanted, and that Wilpon said no way to. So, you know, it's an organization that just, in my opinion, doesn't get it because they don't bleed for the Mets every single day and night. They don't bleed it, man. They don't bleed it. And if you don't bleed, Steinbrenner bled every single night. And I didn't always agree with Steinbrenner did. In fact, I think he did a lot of things that he continuously shot himself in the foot up until the final years of his life when he calmed down and he turned over control of the team to people who knew what the fuck they were doing. Okay? But there's no questioning this man's desire. You know what, Fred, what George Steinbrenner, there were two missions in life that George Steinbrenner had. Win the World Series every year and crush the team in Queens in every conceivable way as often as possible. Now, if you're a Yankees fan, you got to love that mentality, man. If you're a Mets fan, do you get the idea that Fred Wilpon and the people running the Mets want to win the World Series every single year, that they bleed over the wins and losses every single year, and that their mission in life is to destroy the team up on East 161st Street and River Avenue in the Bronx? Do you get that feeling? Have you ever gotten that feeling? They bleed the Brooklyn Dodgers still. They don't bleed the Mets. They don't bleed the Mets. And what I would love to see with the Mets is for an ownership group to come in, take control of the team that bleeds blue and orange every single day. Every day. Every day of every year. That puts the Mets front and center, first and foremost. The Mets. And maybe a new ownership group would come in and might remodel the outside of Citi Field. I'd love to see them build another shell around the current exterior of Citi Field to give the park a little bit of a different look on the outside. That'd be a blessing to see something like that happen. Here's a story. Give you an indication of what Fred Wilpon is like. And when I tell you that the man doesn't bleed for the New York Mets, if you go back to the 1998 Saturday afternoon game between the Mets and the Yankees, July something or other, that was that crazy game. It was the Fox game of the week. And it went back and forth all day. Piazza hit a home run off of Ramiro Mendoza that I think it's still in flight. You remember that? It was the game in which Matt Franco came up against Mariano Rivera with runners on second and third. Ricky Henderson was on third. Edgardo Alfonso was on second. Franco was at the plate. Mets are down by 1. 2 strikes on Rivera. The crowd is, what a rowdy. I was watching the game from an area in the press box that I had found at Shea Stadium that day where I could actually cheer. I mean, my voice was hoarse at the end of the game. So there's Mariano on the mound. He's got a 1-2 count on Matt Franco. On a 1-2 pitch, Franco gets his bat on the ball and lines a clean single to right field. Crowd is going crazy. Ricky Henderson comes in to score. O'Neill comes up with the ball. Alfonso's rounding third. Here's the throw to the plate. Late, Alfonso slides in safely. Mets win. Shea Stadium is about to fall down. I mean, the place was just animalistic at the time. It was the loudest. I've been going to Shea Stadium since I was 8 years old. That was the loudest I had ever heard Shea Stadium in my life. Now, I wasn't at any of the playoff or World Series games in '86. Perhaps they may have beaten that crowd that day at Shea Stadium. But the place is going crazy. So I get on the elevator, the press elevator, to go downstairs for the post games. Stepping into the elevator with myself and a whole bunch of other people is Fred Wilpon. And he goes to the back of the elevator. The doors close, and I turn around, and I said to Fred Wilpon, Fred, what a game, huh? You know what Fred Wilpon says? You know what he says to me? Great day for New York. I was stunned. I mean, I was stunned. I'm going to go through here. Great day for New York. For New York? I think it was a great day for half of New York. It was a shitty-ass day for the other half of New York. It wasn't a great day for New York, and it wasn't a great day for half of New York. Fred, it was a great day for the Mets. It was a great day to be alive and a New York Mets fan. Great day for New York. You know, all these years later, that was 1998. What was that, 14 years ago? 16 years ago. That has never left my consciousness. That has never left me. Great day for New York. My goodness, man. I was welling up with pride as a Mets fan, a die-hard, hardcore, fight to the death underdog Mets fan. It was a great day to be alive in New York City and a fan of the Mets. It wasn't a great day for New York. If you go back to 86, I've got the tapes at home. You can find them on YouTube. NBC's cameras in the Mets clubhouse. Mets win Game 7. A year to that date, I was at Shea Stadium running the bases and making believe I was Jesse Orosco. All on my own. Had the whole stadium to myself. But go back to 1986. I think it was October 27th, if I had to guess. 1986, Game 7. Mets win the World Series that night against the Red Sox. Rappin' Roberto, Buster Brown, is on the podium inside the Mets clubhouse. He's interviewing Davey Johnson. He's interviewing Frank Cashin. Frank Cashin said, Davey, trophy presentation from then Commissioner Peter Uberoth. Davey, you take it. You're stronger than I am. Cashin says to Johnson. Johnson takes the trophy, holds it up. You can see the driplets of champagne being sprayed up on there. So Costas interviews Cashin. Costas interviews Johnson, Davey. And then he calls Fred Wilpon up onto the podium. Part owner of the New York Mets, partner of the... Here comes Wilpon up on the stage. I didn't catch it then because I was in heaven that night. Okay? I was in absolute heaven that night when the Mets won the World Series that year. So I didn't catch it then. But I caught it after 1998 when Wilpon said that to me. Great, Fred, what a great game today, huh? Great day for New York. Great day for New York. So I now go back and watch the tapes of 86 with Wilpon being interviewed. Do you know what Wilpon said that night on the podium? You got it. Not a great night for Mets fans. Great night for New York. Now, if he had said, great night for Mets fans, this is what we've always been after since we purchased the franchise, the culmination of all these years of hard work, the ups and downs, the dream has come true, Bob. It's a great night for the Mets, our Mets fans out there all over, and it's a great night for New York City. Now, that would have been appropriate to me. He loves New York, Fred Wilpon. He kind of likes the team he owns, too. He loves New York. He kind of likes the team he owns, too. I happen to like Terry Collins. I think Terry Collins is a pretty good baseball man. But he's milquetoast. And I would rather have the Terry Collins who made like the drill sergeant in that, what was that Vietnam movie that that guy was in, the actor whose name escapes me right now. There have been so many movies made on Vietnam. Full Metal Jacket. There we go. I would rather have the Terry Collins who used to in his earlier baseball managerial career with both the Astros and the Angels. I'd rather have the Terry Collins who acted like the drill sergeant in Full Metal Jacket than the Terry Collins we have right now. Okay? There's a move that the Mets hierarchy could make that would instantaneously begin to change immediately the culture of this organization. It would inject life into a dull fan base And it would give Mets fans a sense of purpose and pride that has long been missing from the environment that envelops and really envelops this organization. And that is by naming Wally Backman as the next manager of the New York Mets. Wally Backman. You know, it's not lost on me that the New York Yankees back in the 1970s, they went through a few managers. Steinbrenner bought the team, and Bill Verdon was the manager at that time. And soon Verdon was replaced, and a scrappy, diehard second baseman who had managed in Minnesota and Detroit and Texas, but had always retained his Yankee roots and his Yankee passion. Billy Martin, second baseman with the Yankees, spent some time with the Kansas City Athletics, Detroit Tigers in his career, but always was a Yankee. And came to the Yankees loving the Yankees, came back to the Yankees loving the Yankees. And the culture around the Yankees began to shift immediately upon Martin's arrival. They went to the World Series in 76, lost to the Reds, won the World Series in 78, won the World Series in 77, won the World Series in 78, went to the World Series in 76. But Yankees fans felt pride again in their team because they were being led by that Dago second baseman who didn't take shit from anyone. And if you were going to put on the pinstripes in the Bronx, you were going to run through a fucking brick wall, win, lose, or draw playing for Billy Martin. The games were over. The bar had been raised. This wasn't milquetoast Bill Verdon managing the Yankees anymore. This was a Yankee coming home to manage the Yankees. And it's not lost on me that another second baseman at another time who bleeds Mets blue and orange, scrappy, a fighter, a guy that doesn't know how to take no for an answer, who you will run through a brick wall for. Wally Backman is exactly the kind of culture changer on field that the Mets so desperately need. I mean, so desperately need. And yet, where is he? Toiling away in AAA in Las Vegas. Not only toiling away in Las Vegas, but with a ball club with the composition of the roster from top to bottom that is nowhere near as talented as many other teams in the Pacific Coast League. All Wally Backman is doing right now in the PCL is leading the Las Vegas Mets to the best record in that league as of this very second. The best record in the league as of this very second. The man knows how to manage a pitching staff. The man has Mets blood in his DNA. The Mets fans relate to this guy, a scrapper, a fighter, a thorn in your side. He's the same way as a skipper. He's the same way as a manager. And how the Mets don't see this. Fine, Terry Collins took the reins the first couple of years. It's time for Terry Collins' reign in Queens to end. It's time for the Mets to go with a hungry go-getter, a guy who was a World Series champion, a guy who identifies with the Mets, their core, their brand, their legacy, their tradition, their everything. This is a World Series champion. This is the Mets. Wally Backman is the Mets' modern day Billy Martin, who is yearning to come home. Martin yearned for years before the Yankees named him their manager. Yearned for years to manage the Yankees. And the Yankees were afraid of Martin. Just like the Mets ownership right now seems to be afraid of making Wally Backman the manager. It's a tragedy. It really is a tragedy. Backman, who was named the manager of the Arizona Diamondbacks several years ago, losing his job unceremoniously, unfairly, outcast, blackballed out of baseball for years. Here's a man who has come back and has bided his time, has paid his dues, has managed in the independent leagues, managed in A-ball, managed in Double-A, is doing tremendous work at Triple-A right now. The Mets need an identity. They need an identity. And as much as I love Terry Collins and think he's a good baseball man, he's the wrong man at the wrong time, managing the wrong team. It's time for the games to be over. The Yankees are on a downturn right now. If Tanaka's out for any considerable period of time, they're going to sink like a rock to the bottom of the lake. Thank God if that happens. The Yankees are old. They're slow. They're fragile. They're vulnerable. New York City is ripe for the picking again. New York City is ripe for the picking. It's time for the Mets to take over the city of New York again. They owned it lock, stock, and barrel in the 80s. You couldn't find a Yankee cap if you looked all day. It was the Mets. It was the mighty Mets. And I want to see them mighty again. Mighty again. Out with the old. Out with the Yankees. They're on the way out. In with the Mets. It's time for the New York Mets to reemerge as the signature franchise in baseball in New York City. It's time for the New York Mets to reemerge as one of the signature franchises in all of baseball. It's time to take all of the underachieving, despite the fact that they won a World Series title in '86. The '80s were a great disappointment for Mets fans. They underachieved time and again with the most talented team in baseball for 3-4 years straight running. And it's time for the Mets, for the sleeping bear to awaken one more